China is failing. The glorious rise of China wasn't because of them. It was because of America. Now they are going to fall. So why? Corporations spent billions investing in China. They shipped jobs overseas for the low cost of the workforce. Now America can produce products cheaper and faster. The mistake was that instead of increasing productivity, automation, and investing in the workforce, which was what America was doing for generations, they decided that they can open the same manufacturing facilities overseas. That stupidity is what got them. If those jobs remained in the US, we would have innovated away the need for more labor. Instead, it stunted the growth of humanity and cost those corporations billions. It can also be shown that the stupidity has cost the corporations and everyone else in America trillions. Not to mention again, building in America is cheaper than China. The only reason they're still there is legacy investments. They already invested billions, so they don't really want to move. However, a recent survey of 200 executives of large USA manufacturers conducted by the Boston Consulting Group found 21% were currently relocating production back to the US or currently planning to move in the next 2 years. In addition, 33% said they were considering moving manufacturing back to the US in the near future. Corporations are learning it too. Building in America is just better, and China is going to lose market share. Now, as costs are rising in China, they are still damaging American companies as they produce knockoffs. Literally, Chinese companies that manufacture American products are manufacturing more in the same factories and selling them themselves. If there is a legal dispute, well, you aren't Chinese, and let's face it, a lot of the time the companies are owned by China's government. The legal system isn't there for you. They also use corrupt government to force payment when they don't deliver. You know what else they are doing? Stealing intellectual property so they can create knockoff companies. What also is going to destroy American jobs further after China makes replacement companies for every US company that they think they can make a quick buck in China? They are going to use slave labor and undercut. Free labor is quite a bit of an advantage, completely devastating for their country in the long run and for humanity, but giving up slave labor has never ended badly. This looks like it would be good for China, doesn't it? Question. If you know that China's products are produced from slave labor, they are destroying your country's companies, and it is quite easy to boycott them, what is going to happen? Would your company suffer harm to their reputation? Like if Russia cuts off oil from Europe as international blackmail, would you shift away from doing business with them? China's products will be known as inferior, slave-made, and a danger to you. This time, America now will be against them, and as not just as the people that are offended by the slave labor and deadly working condition, but also by corporations, learning that doing so will increase their profits. A corporate-led boycott to increase their profits. Has that ever happened? We all know that America's media is used as the puppet of the corporate enterprises. I really don't see that going well. How about another topic? Housing. China isn't just exports. They have other economies, other pieces of that great economy that, supposed to be a miracle. How about housing? 65 million empty homes. That's 1/5 of all houses in China. Talk about a housing bubble. The housing bubble in the United States was nothing compared to this. We also have all those loans. Lucky for us, China is holding the bag for the loans as well. S&P Global Ratings estimate that their property prices will decrease 30% this year, a worse decline than during the 2008 financial crisis. So what should you do about way too many homes that no one needs? That's right. Give them more money so they can build more that they currently aren't able to finish. Chinese media outlet Caxton reported that Beijing was preparing to issue 200 billion yen in loans to complete unfinished housing projects. Beijing has also taken measures to boost the economy more generally, such as lowering interest rates and rolling out stimulus, including the announcement last week of 300 billion yen in new credit through its state-run policy banks. Throw money at the problem, and everything is just going to be fine. Just one company, Everglade, is 300 billion in debt and have 1.6 million unfinished homes. They are also a small company, 30% of the economy. Well, if nothing else hits them, they should be fine. It only consists of 70% of the family's wealth. So what happens if you sell? You can't. You need to pass certain rules before you do so. Is the price high enough? Have you held the house long enough? Do you have the right friends? I mean, are you rich and well connected? Because other than that, you can't sell. Now, the world is seeing China as less corrupt, and they have worked hard to put out this image. As we know, corporate media is easy to manipulate if you have the money. So how's it really going? When they are going after corruption, this will fix everything. Lu Lujin loaned $28 million to Zhang Pin, the chairman of an agricultural company, using Yushu property as collateral. However, a slight oversight, that building was already collateralized 13 other times. This slight oversight was easily rectified when Lu went to the company Ping Seed Co. with his family to ask for the money back. So, China arrested the criminal Lu, finding that he stabbed a man. The crime that he witnessed, one that he went to court and testified, turns out he actually committed it. And the guy that's spending 25 years in prison will be joined by Lu. And don't bother listening to the audio where the cops are telling the convicted person that he needs to change his story and finger Lu. It is estimated about 4 to 8% of GDP is depleted by corruption. Corruption is a difficult problem that hampers economic development, political democracy, and social harmony in China. Many studies on the determinants of and factors affecting corruption find that corruption is always related to discretional power, incompetent or weak legal institutions, and inadequate supervision. Local officials must pursue high-priority political targets, but have immense discretion over which laws to implement, a relatively standard for corruption consequently arises since non-implementation of laws may be mandate-serving or may be corrupt, and determine which requires extra information on why non-implementation occurred. The theory is supported by evidence from original survey and case research on the implementation of the village election laws. I discussed implications for anti-corruption efforts, development patterns, and future research. So the damage done to the economy is greater than their current growth. There is no real desire to fix it. If corruption helps you maintain power and prevents a citizen revolt, would you actually work to fix it? With the downturn in the housing market, China is shifting into beefing up the economy by pumping money into infrastructure. This seems like a good idea, as long as the increases aren't wasted, right? If you're making something that is good for future economic gains, right? From our sample, the evidence suggests that for over half of the infrastructure investments in China made in the last 3 years, decades, the costs are larger than the benefits they generate. So China is building things that they don't need and don't help. Our estimate is that infrastructure cost overruns have equaled approximately 1/3 of China's US $28 trillion debt. The investment boom is projected with poor outcomes has created harmful macroeconomic consequences, with China being the most indebted of 25 emerging markets. It is a myth that China grew thanks largely to heavy infrastructure investment. It grew to bold economic liberalization and institutional reforms, and this growth is now threatened by overinvestments in low-grade infrastructure. So currently China is building things that aren't worth the cost, letting them run over budget, and supporting their economy by taking a big gamble. If they don't run the country into the ground due to the housing issue, then they might be making the right decision. So what are the people saying?
It's just that in Red China, large projects and companies that should be profitable are almost always losing money. Even ordinary Chinese citizens have felt that something is not right with this government in recent years. Some Chinese have asked the CCP, the highway is losing money, the high-speed railway is losing money. The 3 barrels of oil, namely CNPC, Sinopec, and Sinopec, are losing money, and electricity is losing money. So what are you doing that is not incurring losses?
As long as the infrastructure has some benefit, it isn't like they are using the toll roads to generate more corruption or anything. There has been mounting suspicion that their operations, usually companies owned by the local governments, may be exaggerating their losses for their own benefit. In theory, road operators are allowed to collect tolls for 15 years in order to offset the cost of construction. The official China Daily reported last year that many operators have continued to collect tolls even long after recovering their cost and making profits. It noted that an expressway has been collecting tolls since 1997, despite recouping more than double its cost of construction in its first 12 years of operation. A kleptocracy. One where the government steals from the people, or a corporocracy, where corporations get to decide what is happening. Which one is it? So their infrastructure doesn't make any money and always overbuilt. Overruns in cost are causing drivers to kill themselves because they can't afford the tolls. So China is going to be left with massive projects and empty buildings. Just roadways and buildings just waiting for the population to catch up. I'm sure that the buildings will be fine for 100 years, and if you don't drive on roads, it isn't like they need to be worked on, right?
大家好，这是我搁工地上拿回来个钢筋，这钢筋可好，好到哪儿？这。
This is the steel bar used in the construction of a building in China. Oh my gosh, it's so scary. The highway bridge collapsed on the Wuhan-Huangshi Expressway. The bridge of the highway collapsed. Friends, it's scary. It's scary. Oh my gosh.
The infrastructure is being built, has constant corruption dragging it down. This is only the roads, right? It's only the roads and bridges. It's only...
There is no guarantee of quality in large projects that are under a lot of supervision, let alone in small housing construction, and there is a lack of protection for the general public.
这些施工啊，我看一下啊，我用我手来摸它的石头上啊，看一看，不用你老常，我真的不用看一看，我用手扒下来的。这个正在装修，不拿那什么了，还没有住人啊。这个房顶在装修过程当中就变成这个样子了。姐姐，我又抠下来一块。
Here is a citizen showing off her new home. During the renovation process, she touched the ceiling with her hand and was able to poke a gaping hole.
So, everything in China can fall apart, and the houses that you buy might be completely worthless the day after they're done. Welcome to Tofu Dredge Projects. The corruption and desire not to do anything about it is leading to this. China's Insights is a great channel, and you should check it out if you want to see any more of this country that, honestly, it is surprising that it's still standing. So we have a country that is losing its manufacturing, that is close to 30% of economic output, a housing collapse market that is being held up because no one's allowed to sell anything, being 30% of their economy, and 9% of the economy being infrastructure that is just as shoddy as the homes that are massively overpriced. What more can go wrong? Declining domestic soybean and oil crop output. 80% of soybeans are imported, while they have had a drop of 16% in domestic production. Losing lots of land as 1.4 million hectares are no longer planted. Weak influence in global supply chain. In 2000, they had 102% food self-sufficiency. 76.8 in 2020 and expected to drop to 65 in 2035. Their search for a seed industry breakthrough, and they are putting all their hopes on this one to produce a miracle seed that will somehow feed all of China. Loss of fertile land. They have 7% of the country that is arable. Their red line is 120 million hectares of arable land, and they are expected to fall beneath that in 10 years. And everyone is planting cash crops. Everyone out for themselves. Corruption and waste of strategic resources, losing so much to waste. 35 million metric tons of grain every year is lost due to poor storage and transportation. Hiding the data seems to be the right call when the reality is that they are forming cancer alleys all over the country and making their land unsuitable for growing food. Pretending something isn't bad makes it go away, right? But today, the land around Xing in China's new industrial landscape. Since the 1990s, nearly 3,000 factories have built on the once beautiful shores of the lake. The chemical boom made Xing one of China's richest country-level towns, with a GDP that reached 17.06 billion in 2012. But many local farmers have given up eating the crops they grow. They know that their vegetables are planted in soil polluted with cadmium, lead, and mercury, heavy metals that are dangerous to human health. Xing confessed that he rarely eats local produce either. There's too much soil pollution, he said. This isn't a isolated thing. Experts estimate that there are over 450 cancer villages in China. The problem is getting worse. They poisoned the lake as well. And what happens if you point out problems like this? Prison. You go to prison for extortion and blackmail. Then the Ministry of Environmental Protection names the lake a national model city for environmental protection just before an algae boom. Lake Tai Basin has exposed 30 million people to that pollution and the cancer that is going to be coming. They also exposed everyone that ate the produce grown from that region. They are now trying to clean it up. Now, after hundreds of billions of dollars in damage to their environment and even more to the people. But the real thing is people know what happens when you try to speak up and protect the neighbors from poison. We, Lu Hong, the man that fought to stop all this, still can't talk to the media and is a living testament that you keep your mouth shut until the problem gets so bad that the government can't ignore it anymore. Or they just, continue to ignore it. China will suffer toxic food for a generation and a decrease in the ability to feed themselves. However, their problem is worse. Processed foods do use the poison foods from the fields. However, they are selling foods that isn't food. Baby formula with lethal amounts of melamine. Every China product should be treated as dangerous until tested otherwise. $843 billion loaned out. Of the 165 countries where China has made development loans since 2000, the study finds that 42 now carry debt to China equal to or greater than 10% of gross domestic product. China is giving these out so they will fail. What kind of banker doesn't want to get their money back? One that wants your house. They are doing this to seize assets and make the countries obey any of China's policy hopes and dreams. They are also hiding it because what they are doing would outrage the countries that China is ripping off. We don't know how much resources or what policies these countries have surrendered to China, but it is bad and it will get worse as China runs out of money. Seems good China is getting whatever they need from poor countries. Their secret loans won't remain secret as time goes on. This will further tarnish working with China and make people see them as a threat to anyone that makes a deal with them. There's also the massive corruption that they help enable. Food that is poisonous, fields that can't grow safe food, trillions in environmental cleanup, and trillions more in healthcare costs. Corporations banding the country, a housing collapse, infrastructure that can collapse at any time and is overbuilt and doesn't generate enough returns. Corporations weren't made to do the right thing. They always say, just stay out of our way and trust us. When they say that, it's like a child telling you this time the candy won't make them sick. There is a reason why Republican states are failures with the economy and why Republican presidents do so bad with it. Corporations will demand candy and tell you it's good for them. Look at China. This is what happens when that is the case. Or how about the river that caught on fire? A river in the United States caught on fire. And you know what happened after the cleanup? Billions in outdoor activity. Destroy the environment, and every single time you destroy jobs. What more can go wrong when there's no accountability? Well, it turns out China's economy is 60% smaller than we thought. So does that mean their downturn will be less if they are smaller? That means it won't be bad, right? Wrong. This study shows that China's been lying about how big they are, and they won't be able to sustain the debt. Currently, they are close to 700% of their GDP. They are going to be seen as a huge risk by every government as things start getting worse. When the housing market collapses, the government will throw money at it. It can't ever recover though, because China's population is at their high point. This is probably the best case scenario. Remember all those toxins released into the environment? Poisoned food, poisoned water, and massive concentrations of those toxins workers have been exposed to at work. The population of working to those that need to be taken care of will invert at a best case scenario in 2080. However, the poison and damaged environment and that society is going to collapse. Can we this time stop pretending that autocracy works? China has never been the model country. Yes, their rise was astonishing, but it was because we allowed it and helped it along. These are just a few of the hundreds of major crises that are going to face China in the coming decades, and they won't be able to overcome them. Pretending that they were amazing while ignoring everything else was just dumb. Without a media that holds those in power accountable for their failures, every country will suffer this same fate. Wonder why you're a better person being a Democrat? It is because the media will kick you in the teeth for anything. Or Republicans get to fail and are treated like heroes for pretending that they don't understand reality. Being held accountable is what makes society function. And those in the Republican Party that is why they are speeding towards Nazism. The media has failed us. And since you are better than Republicans, it's time that you fight back.
So if you like those videos, please help. The YouTube algorithm is horribly biased against, progressives. And the Republicans have massive amounts of money just to buy it off. So every time you like, every time you put a comment down below, helps us out. So like, subscribe, and if you really want to help the environment, down below is a link to a GoFundMe page where it has a brand new power generation that is 0% carbon emission and one of the cheapest productions of electricity the world has ever had.